Michael Knowles, host of the Michael Knowles Show, host of the book club on PragerU. He's joining us now from Daily Wire. Hello, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well, Glenn. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, so now you're Italian, so I guess you can speak with knowledge on Columbus that none of us who are not Italian can speak. But Columbus was an amazing guy, and you have been talking about him and writing about him and researching, because you saw this one coming, for a long time. So tell people who Columbus was.
Gladly. And on your point about the Italians, I think our only hope of keeping Columbus statues up is to make this part of a sort of grievance, identity politics thing for the Italians. Even that is probably not going to work. You mentioned people tearing down Robert E. Lee, so you can't point and talk about how that man betrayed the Declaration of Independence. Well, we're tearing down statues of the man who wrote the Declaration of Independence. We're tearing down statues of Washington and going all the way back to Christopher Columbus, which shows you that these protests, so-called, really would have descended into riots. It's not about one particular issue in modern America or even at the time of the Revolution. It goes all the way back to Columbus, and really what it is a revolt against Western civilization, because Christopher Columbus embodies Western civilization. This guy was a man of low birth. He educated himself. He was unbelievably determined. He went through all of the great books of Western civilization, traveled all around the world, was determined to have a voyage funded to find a passage to the Indies across the ocean. He went to Portugal. They said no. He went to Spain. They said no. Finally, in Spain, they said yes. He made it across the ocean using virtually nothing other than dead reckoning and his own gut. The guy basically just looked up at the stars, didn't even have basic navigational equipment, put down several mutinies, made it to the New World, expanded our civilization, and he has been horribly maligned, now especially by people who don't know a thing about him. And in the words of Carol Delaney, who's one of the Columbus scholars, wrote a good book on the man, people are accusing him of crimes that he did not commit, that actually the sailors who were with him may have committed, but it's just terribly unfair.
And he stopped. I mean, what was amazing about Columbus was he did go back and forth. When he asked the first time, he was rejected in Spain because he was arrogant. But then he went to a monastery, totally dejected, and he learned really deeply about God and how to communicate with God. And he was so humble that the what do you call it? The fathers of that.
Sure, the brothers. Yeah, the Franciscans.
Yeah, the brothers. They went to Queen Isabella and they said, you have to meet with him again. He's a different man. And all he wanted to do was finish a mission for the glory of God. And he gets on the boat and all the way, read his diary, all the way along, he is talking about God and how he feels led by God, and he's going to find this place. And he's going to discover it, and he breaks all kinds of odds and gets there. When he gets there, he does start to have a little bit of gold fever, and he starts to think, well, I could go back. I want to be the governor of this land. When he goes back, he is arrogant again, and he is broken. He is a broken man, never allowed to come back. And wasn't for crimes. I believe it was punishment kind of for God. He became so arrogant. But what he did was noble. What he did was great. If you look at what he did and how he loved the natives. Well, how is this a problem?
He loved the natives. He loved the natives so much that actually he adopted the son of one of his Native American friends. What you've got to remember, though, and I think what modern revisionists do, is they whitewash everything, and they portray the natives as all exactly the same. And that isn't the case. Like any other people, they were different and they were varied. So the first group of natives that Christopher Columbus encountered, the Taino Indians, were very nice. They were very peaceable, and he instructed his sailors to be kind to them and not to take advantage of them. There were other groups of islanders that those islanders warned them about, the Carib Islanders, who were famously, notoriously cannibals. That's actually where we get the word cannibal from. There were some peaceable tribes, some warlike tribes. You mentioned Columbus's pride and then, his humility because of the pride. He would wear a hair shirt. He was aware of this problem of his, and he would intervene at times on behalf of Native Americans when other Spaniards wanted to hurt them. But a lot of this issue comes from one document that was written by Columbus's chief political rival. That was a man named Francisco de Bobadilla. And all of these modern articles that are seeking to tear down Columbus are based on the writings of this man who ultimately took power from Columbus in the Indies. This is not to say that Columbus was guiltless, but it is to say when you look at other people, for instance, Bartolome de las Casas, the first resident bishop of the Americas, one of the greatest defenders of Native Americans ever, he remained a great defender and admirer of Columbus throughout the end of his life. But this man, Bobadilla, wrote what Columbus perceived to be defamation, calumny about him. Columbus spent the rest of his life trying to correct the record. It would be as though, talk about an imperfect man, you look at someone like Donald Trump, right? This is a guy who certainly he has issues. But if you wanted to assess his character, would you only rely on a book written by Hillary Clinton? I don't think so. I think that would be a little bit biased, and it would lead you to some wrong conclusions.
So what should the people in Columbus, Ohio expect? I mean, they're now demanding that the statue of Columbus come down. What should they do, and how should they defend it?
Well, what is the end goal of this tearing down of statues? Actually, speaking of Trump, he predicted this a couple of years ago. He said, you're going to tear down Robert E. Lee, but very soon you're going to tear down Jefferson, you're going to tear down Washington. And they've been going after Columbus for a while. Is the idea here that any man who was imperfect is going to have his statue taken down? Well, if that's the case, then we simply won't have any statues because men are imperfect. Think about how history will judge us. And then if the tearing down of statues is really about a hatred of our own civilization, I would suggest two things. I would say, first of all, look around at other civilizations. They're blaming Christopher Columbus for all sorts of crimes. I mean, really, I guess an issue at play right now is slavery. The other day, Tim Kaine, the senator, accused America of inventing slavery. I've got news for Tim Kaine and everyone else. Slavery has always existed, and it still exists today in many places in the world. It's not that we invented slavery. Actually, we're just about the only civilization to abolish slavery. So there's an educational component here. You actually have to learn about your civilization. And then what you need is what Columbus himself knew that he needed, which is a little bit of humility, because we sit on our perch of the modern world that this man created and other great men created, and we think that we are flying as we stand on the shoulders of those giants. I think a little bit of humility would help our national conversation and help our understanding of our own history.
Well, that sounds exactly like something a racist would say.
Good point.
And don't deny it, Mike, because that's the only thing. I mean, that's exactly what racists say. So
of course, they deny it.
Yes, Michael Knowles. Michael Knowles from Daily Wire. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Michael.
All right. Thank you, Glenn.